to welcome a group of people who are working across the university on looking at incorporating generative AI into WITS. What does that mean? Is it teaching, learning, specifically in the undergraduate project, and also talking about assessment? That's sort of phase one of a project that I think will get bigger and bigger. So the first project was just to map usage and to see what was going on. And hopefully we will be getting lots of findings that will lead to policy development and help every single one of our faculties to incorporate what it is that our central university has found. So the Generative AI team is a sponsored project of the University Capacity Development Grant and is being led by some really racy people. So one of them is Professor Koshu Padiachi and also Professor Rodney Genga. But there is a whole team that is doing the work and also developing and reporting the work as we go. So today we're very honored and excited to welcome Malcolm Weech and also Wendy Dube to talk a little bit about the work that they've been doing. They've been doing lots of presentations about the first phase of the study and what they found. And the first phase of the study also is built into how it is that we take the study further. So without much more introduction, I'm going to ask everybody to welcome Malcolm and Wendy, and we'll get started from this point. Welcome, everybody. Malcolm, are you going to go first?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, thank you so much for the brief introduction, Ms. Mark. Wendy and I are the two research assistants for the GAI project, and in the first year we were tasked with collecting data on determining the readiness of WITS to adopt GAI. And it was led by sort of policy development needs to be founded by research. I mean, this is WITS. So the first part of the project was just to survey students and interview students on just how ready we are to adopt AI, and using that base data to form or to sort of branch out the second year and third year of the project so that we can action policy on how ready WITS is. So I'll be presenting the quantitative findings while Wendy will be presenting the early qualitative findings. The quantitative findings are being sent to a journal for publication, so this research will be coming out soon. The presentation has also been published, and the data has been published. So if you do want to source it or reference it, it will be available. I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if I am. The project wanted to map both undergraduate and postgraduate GAI engagement first to see just exactly how students are engaging with AI. But after collecting the data, we came across a funny finding where, I won't say, well, funny finding in that the data wasn't normally distributed. And after further investigation and analysis of the data, we sort of came to the conclusion that the reason why it's not normally distributed, or rather, there's no consensus, meaning 99% of the students are not saying the same thing, is because how AI is so novel and new. And we found interesting ways to analyze this very rich data set. So the first test we decided to run, we wanted to see if AI or the usage of AI is linked to familiarity with GAI. So we wanted to test if someone has more knowledge about AI or with using AI, does it affect their frequency and use? Students who are familiar with AI engage with it more, and quite so. And the interesting thing about this formula is that it doesn't just show you the end, it shows you the beginning. And so we've box plotted it. So much so that if you look at the graph, you'll see that students who engage less with AI actually don't find it useful. And that's an interesting finding because it confirms that usefulness or one's usefulness with AI impacts its engagement and its usage. So if the university is not encouraging or sort of creating the space for students within the teaching and learning environment or learning and teaching environment, depending on where you're from, to engage with AI, students won't find it useful. And quite the inverse is opposite. Students who are sort of early adopters are using it and engaging with it way more frequently and find it very useful in terms of the learning outcomes of reading, writing, critical thinking, and problem solving. But more on that shortly. So the first test was just to see if there's a relationship between usefulness and engagement, and certainly there is. The next test we ran was to say, okay, does an individual's socioeconomic status affect their engagement with AI? I know this is going to raise your eyebrows, but being from an African research-intensive university, these are the kind of policies that we need to watch out for. So the second test we ran was the Matt Whitney U test, which then compared two equalized samples of our randomly sampled data set. And what we found was that students who are self-funded engaged more with AI 99.97% more than students who are on financial aid. And that's a very big statistical significance. So now we have causation to say that socioeconomic status greatly impacts engagement. So it's not only if students find AI useful or are encouraged to use will improve its engagement, but also with students' socioeconomic status. And by looking at the Matt Whitney U sort of ranks and groups and allocates a sum so that you can see how big of a disparity between your particular groups. And in this case, the sum of ranks for non-NSFAS funded students was 100,000 versus the sum of ranks of NSFAS students, which was only 68,000. And that is a massive gap in terms of how AI is engaged and affected by socioeconomic status. In the full study, you'll see we sort of explain it from a theoretical lens of digital divide theory and socio-constructivist learning theory, as that socioeconomic status may possibly equalize and allow students to sort of engage more with resources, but we're still investigating that further. And then we decided to run the Crusoe-Wallace H test. And this test was to see, okay, I now have socioeconomic status. I know it's a influencing factor. I know that students who find AI useful it's also an influencing factor. So now we wanted to compare these two. We wanted to see if there's a strong evidence that AI and its engagement levels differ across faculties. So then we ran the Crusoe-Wallace H test and found that different students from different disciplines engage with AI differently. And differently, it affects the four learning outcomes quite differently. So I'll give you an example. The engineering faculty, the faculty that I'm from, typically uses it for critical thinking and not so much writing and reading. Whereas other disciplines obviously show different levels of engagement. But when the paper comes out, we'll present sort of a more focused understanding on how these critical outcomes are affected by one's faculty affiliation. And it's interesting because you find that this faculty affiliation has a strong impact on the critical outcomes in terms of how students are learning. And Wendy will expand a bit more because she goes into detail when she does the exploratory analysis. The last thing we wanted to test for was, we know that the critical outcomes of reading, writing, critical thinking, and problem solving are linked, and they tend to cluster. So we wanted to see, we sort of flipped the script on this formula and used it sort of in a novel way, where we wanted to see if they no longer co-integrate with each other, if they no longer cluster. And if they no longer cluster, by what faculty are they not clustering anymore? I know that sounds really complicated, especially because principal component analysis is used in the inverse. We want to see things that group together so that we can highlight associated factors. And we sort of flipped the script and we said, no, let's see if they no longer co-integrate. And a surprising finding was that a third of the time, based on frequency and usage, students are pulling away from that tradition. They are critically thinking and problem solving without reading and writing, or are writing but are struggling with critical thinking and problem solving in terms of AI usage. So it sort of splits the tradition on what we know in terms of teaching and learning and how students progress in terms of the logical thinking. And that's sort of a very important result because it's going to inform the pathway forward, especially in terms of, we looked at it at a lens from self-efficacy theory, in terms of institutional support, support from, of course, faculty and, of course, subject matter within courses. And we found that, again, that also varies. The components, sort of what we're coining as dissociate, disintegration due to AI. But I mean, these are the early results. These are very early, and some of the interesting insights. And I think I'm going to hold it off there because I'm sure I've got a lot of maybe scratching your head and thinking what's going on, but I'm happy I'm open to any questions you may ask. The project is led by Prof. Pariachi and Prof. Genga, and if I can't answer a question, they would most happily answer that question. I see in my slideshow the emails didn't come up, technical issues. But I'm going to hand over back to you, Ms. Mark.
Oh, thanks so much, Malcolm. Wow. Those are really interesting results. And as you say, very, very preliminary. I think the data was collected more than a year ago now. And so in our faculty particularly, I think people took a little while to realize that this thing was out there and that we could be using it in varied ways. So I want to open the floor before we ask Wendy to chat to us a little bit about the qualitative findings. In case people have got urgent questions now. Otherwise, if you're feeling totally overwhelmed, then I can ask Wendy to continue to present, and then we can take joint questions at the end. Shadi, you want to go ahead?
Hi. Thank you, Malcolm, for that presentation. Just a quick question. I just wanted to clarify if the survey was done also on postgrad students, because I wanted to know about the digital divide, if it permeates into the postgrad space as well.
So that's a lovely question. The postgrad we had to separate from the data because the current NSFAS funding scheme does not cater for postgraduate education. There are multiple revenue streams for postgraduate students who are under socioeconomic status and pressure. But in terms of a survey, that's kind of difficult to pinpoint. I have brought this up for our paper 2 on how we're going to model this, how we're going to model the different financial models. But there's hundreds, there's grants at every corner, and it's going to be hard to disassociate. But the undergraduates, because they have sort of a single main body of of financial aid through the NSFAS scheme, it's easier to sort of observe the trends 99.95% of the time. Lovely question. But we are looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Malcolm, I have some questions and comments which maybe we're going to tie through to the end when Wendy comes through. But it's really interesting to see how many different ways you guys model the data and ask your questions. And yeah, full kudos for flipping out on some of the really interesting things that you're finding. And there are huge, I think, teaching and learning implications for particularly your last slide, where you're looking at those disassociations that we have historically said are things that are either sequential or definitely paired. So lots of interesting work to come, I think. Wendy, I'm going to ask if you're ready to give us a brief synopsis of the approaches that you took and the things that you found.
No problem. I'm going to share my screen now. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon once again, everyone. In terms of the qualitative study, so from the survey, there was an option for staff and students to indicate if they would be interested in participating in a focus group discussion. So with this specific presentation, it's a summary from the student focus group discussions. So the students were ranging from all different faculties, and you will see in some quotations I did put what their field of study is. So it's not from a specific faculty, or you might see common students from a specific faculty. So again, this is a summary in terms of what we were seeing from just looking at the transcripts, and some of the summaries is from the questions that we had asked, and also the findings from the quantitative to actually present a better picture on how the students are engaging with the AI. So I'm just moving here. So in terms of AI as reading and enhanced literacy assistant, so from the discussions, there were various ways where students were explaining how they actually use their AI and to what extent. So students were also explaining that they use AI to simplify academic text or paraphrase material, or even just reading. So in terms of this, they explained how in some assignments and in some fields, they may be text-heavy materials or theories that they don't understand, and they would like AI to like simplify it or make it in a readable format. So some specific context. So here there was one student that said, a law student that said, I usually use it to kind of boil down or simplify those text-heavy theories, like I said, especially when it's written in a different context like the United States or Europe. So AI helps me explain in a South African context. And then also for a science student majoring in philosophy, so I would say when it comes to WITS and reading skills, their reading skills were low. So having courses like philosophy made it intense in terms of reading, and AI was helping them in terms of reading and understanding those concepts. So this just highlights how our students may be engaging with AI in terms of like understanding the courses and the theories that they come across in different fields. Then we move to writing and argumentation support from the AI. So again, students also explained how AI helps them with structuring, refining arguments, and also improving their writing. As we know, it first started with AI tools like Grammarly, where it would help you fix your full stops or commas or even just spelling mistakes. But some students were also explaining how they actually use other tools like ChatGPT ChatGPT, Copilot, and other tools in terms of like their writing, where maybe they start off by writing a specific assignment or concept and then putting it in AI to paraphrase it, especially if it's a student that does not speak English as their first language. So again, from a digital arts student, for writing, I think I'd say ChatGPT is useful for when I have an idea, but it's shallow. Maybe it can give me more depth into the idea and more branches. And then this other student said that they feel that their writing is childish, so they'll write paragraphs and then ask AI to make it more formal. So again, this touches on when someone is feeling, or students are feeling, that their writing is not in depth enough or not meeting the university standards, they would use AI to make it more formal or academic. And then again, this was a discussion where a lot of the critical thinking development, we touched on it, where students were asked, do they feel that AI is taking away from the critical thinking or engaging with context or concepts in a way that allows them to think, or is AI helping them think for them, basically? So then students had answered this in terms of that AI helps them to understand concepts and also engage in practicing. So they would quiz themselves with the AI, and then again exploring different explanations. So sometimes students had experienced that if they in lectures and a lecturer explains something in a certain way, AI helps them to understand it maybe in a different way, or even giving them examples and also engaging with it to help them practice different ways that they could be assessed in. So again, here you see a student from economics say that AI helps them with quizzing themselves for specific topics and helps them think critically. So this is just showing that maybe the students are not just getting the answers from AI, but using the AI to engage with already existing material that they have from their lectures or their courses. And then this other student said that AI helps them give them a structured answer and to verify information. Again, this is how students are saying they engage with the content. There might be arguments in terms of whether it is the right way or the most appropriate way to use it, but this is how they think engaging with the AI helps them think critically. And then a biokinetic student said that helps them think critically. And then in sort of, if you have a narrow way of thinking, it helps expand things. And also they see AI as an assistant and they feel more confident with it. And then in terms of problem solving, which links to the critical thinking, this is where students also explained more in depth in terms of how they use it and what support does AI give them. So one of the questions was phrased in a way that we were asking students whether it is taking away from engaging with lecturers or the academic supports that exists. And students explained that AI also bridges the gap where maybe you may not be able to ask a lecturer a certain question at a certain time, and maybe you're doing an assignment last minute and you need an explanation. So this was using it as a support, especially for technical fields like computer science, finance, coding, and all that. So again, students mainly from the accounting, again, in terms of the students that were available from the focus group discussion, it was students that said they were interested. So there may be students from a specific faculty that attended most of the focus groups. Here, mostly accounting students had explained the AI as a support system, where they say it helps. It seems like a tutor, but they don't rely on it completely. And then here, some courses require routine and have a lot of rules. So AI helps them give an exact format and following the rules. And then again, here it says it gives me support when I don't understand a certain topic. This again did come across from other students, but specifically accounting students had explained how it helps them actually identify where the steps will be missing, or even for computer science students where they said they would use AI to identify maybe an error in a code or something that they may not be able to see. And then lastly, students were asked about how they think the use of AI may affect the ethical use of it, or academic integrity, and also what they feel is missing from the university and their lectures in terms of what is ethical use of AI. So again, this is where students were explaining what they think the limitations are, or what gaps they have noticed in terms of like the lecturers and engaging with the AI and the rules surrounding it, which is what we also wanted to know in terms of, do students know how they should be using it, or is there a way that is communicated, or is there differences and similarities in terms of how they understand ethical use of AI is in their academic journeys. So then students had explained that they felt that the university has not provided enough guidance on how to use AI responsibly. And then some reported that there is confusion of whether AI is allowed or not, especially if it's not explicitly said. And then again, some students noted that there's inconsistencies in terms of lecture stances, in terms of how to use AI or whether to use it or not. So I again hear from different students, they say that AI should be a learning aid, not replacement for actual thinking. Universities should create frameworks for its responsible use. So again, this is students identifying that AI is part of how we're learning now, but then there should be explicit rules and frameworks in terms of how they should use it, but also not replace how they're learning. And again, this other students say even when you're using it, even when they're using it, they become skeptical and scared of how do they use it properly because they're not told. And then another student said that the university should just guide them in terms of how to use it ethically and warn students of not using answers always. So again, in terms of this conversation, some students had identified that there may be errors in AI, and that there's a certain way that the university and even their lecturers can explain to them what is ethical use of AI and to what extent. And I think if you remember previously, there was one student that they said they used AI to help them think critically, or even help them quiz. So the students had explained that there could be certain elements of a course or module or field of study where AI is used maybe to help them think critically or as tutor support, but then those specific steps of when to use it, when not to use it, how to use it, and how to critique the answers given from AI would be beneficial for them. So basically, yes, this is the summary of the student insight from the focus groups. The focus groups range from 4 to 6 participants, and we did have 6 focus group discussions of students from the surveys and those that indicated that they were interested, and we are still currently running the staff focus groups. So yes, thank you so much. I am done sharing.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. That's really interesting, and it gives, I think, a different spin on the data that Malcolm shared with us, in that it's much more individualized to the student voice, and we're hearing how people are using it. I think from our faculty's perspective, and this is where I'd like all of our participants today to join in, a lot of what our faculty does is pretty content intensive and then skills intensive. So we're wanting our students to know information and then to be able to do things. And obviously at every step of the way, AI can help with that. And we do have several projects going on where this is being clearly shown in the faculty. And advance notice for those of you who are interested, we're going to start next week with our faculty AI committee. I saw Gavin had joined us earlier, talking about developing policies for the faculty specifically on AI use and how it is we can guide lecturers in not only giving directives to their students, but in designing their own learning opportunities for the students so that they are guided. Because I think one of the findings from the study is that we really need an institutional policy, and that institutional policy needs to feed down specifically to the needs of each faculty. And I think that that will give us a little bit more security in establishing rules and then enforcing rules. Not that I'm keen on policing, but at least students will have then the guideline of what could be acceptable use and what clearly isn't. So I'm going to throw the floor open to all of you guys and ask you from, first of all, what we've seen from Malcolm and Wendy's presentation of overall university data, how you think that some of that affects our faculty, and what sort of input should we give them in taking back our experiences and how it either coincides or doesn't with the data that they're going to have looked to the list of people, and we'll see. Shada, go ahead again.
Sorry, man. I just wanted to chat before I have to leave, but I just wanted to make a comment. I think Wendy's presentation was very good because there was amazingly rich data there from it, like you said, individualistic perspective from the individual students in the focus group. And I thought what was interesting is how well they articulated their perceived usefulness of this tool in their learning compared to some of us staff who are totally lagging behind. I think just what I got from this, which was very stark, was the reminder that they do need some guidance. They've asked for this. This has been going on for some time. I remember I joined another conference when ChatGPT just came on, and one of the things the students said in that panel discussion was that they're looking for guidance on the use of generative AI, even though they sort of told that you can use it, but not really where, when, how, will they get punished, things like that. I also agree with you that I don't agree with policing, and I'm hoping we're not going to have a policy that says,
because we want all students to be having the same capacity. And our technical challenges go further than things that seem to be big things like AI. But for example, just getting Wi-Fi into our extended academic platform has been an ongoing issue for many, many, many years. So to take it that further, that if you're expecting a student to use AI, but their own data, that could certainly have a huge influence on usage in the kinds of things we're asking our students to do. Particularly worrying about that. Malcolm, yeah, how's that as an issue?
So I love that point that was recently raised. I know she had left, but just for sharing purposes, Wendy and I, just for the BartSpa workshop, we had to write an opinion piece on what it's like to be a student in 2025 doing postgraduate research. And I'll share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. But I think that the statement that Wendy and I had come up with, and I think this will hopefully ring well when it's published, is as students, we often find ourselves in a position where AI is, there's these big promises around transformation and the realities and institutional support. If you go to UCT, if you go to WITS, there's now, conversations on who's supporting, who's not supporting. And it's creating this inconsistent expectations on we as postgraduate students. Are we meant to encourage this tool, or are we meant to be policed by this tool or have someone police us? And Wendy and I almost said we're phrasing it as cognitive dissidence, where we chronically uncertain, where we encouraged and then we were whooped with a stick. And as students, we don't want to violate academic policies. But we feel like we're constantly in a defensive learning posture because this tool is so productive and it assists with reading and dense theory, and it assists with our understanding of core concepts that we would need engagement with a lecture with. And now we've got a one-on-one tutor who can help us but it's creating this intellectual chaos, and it's having a negative effect on our well-being. We feel that it's having a negative effect on our well-being, as because both Wendy and I are both master's students doing our research. We're finding that, supervisors are saying, yeah, use it for that. No, don't use it for that. But it's interesting. And we are definitely looking for guidance, because we need the guidance just for our own sanity.
So that looks like she hit leave instead of open her mic. Malcolm, yeah, a comment on that comment is that I do think that it certainly adds tension and pressure. Wendy, do you want to follow up with that?
Yes, and then I was just going to say there was another question in terms of the quanti in the chat box. But yes, in terms of like the digital divide, again, this was explained so well by the students in the focus groups, where some students actually had raised concern that if it is not explained how to use it, students that may be at an advantage in terms of being able to purchase the paid versions of the AI will have an upper leg, as we know that AI is developing and it grows by what or how much people are using it. So some students had indicated that the free versions may be giving insight that is false, but then if you have a paid version, it might be a little bit better. And when you don't know what access, or the university doesn't have a paid version, to what extent do lecturers know to differentiate between the answers from a free version and a paid version? So that was actually raised by students in terms of the digital divide. And if you can afford the paid version, your lecturer might not be able to identify that this was free compared to a free version. So yes, it's very interesting.
So Wendy, that's a fascinating point, because a lot of the work that we've been doing is trying to speak to train prompt engineering, and how you can refine your questions sufficiently to get the answer that you're actually wanting, with the free versions, of course. So the idea that there's a perception that free versions will give you rubbish, but paid versions will give you better, is very problematic. Because, as you say, then the students who can afford to do it will just do that anyway. And the students who can't afford to do it then don't have the trust that if they refine their technique, that the answers still will be good, because they feel like they've got the free version and they're not going to get right answers. So
Exactly.
that's really a big concept to work on, I think. Amanda?
Hi, yes, apologies. I selected share screen instead of the mic. Yeah, so let me add on to what Wendy was saying. Is when I spoke to the first years around using AI, I used the example of, in the past, maybe you got better marks if you had a better poster, or if you could pay to have it laminated, because I know of a few cases where a lecturer would give people whose posters are laminated more marks than people whose weren't. But this is like over 20 years ago. So I kind of told, because I also had the question around whether or not paid AI is better than free AI. And then I said, we're done with whether or not your poster is laminated or not. It's all about it's all about skills now at the moment. And you, as you said, Shira, you can develop skills by refining your prompting skills, and then you can more or less get the same as the paid version. And then what I actually wanted to say was to add on to what Malcolm was saying is, AI only, or generative models only, came out at the end of my master's, and I think I would have been a saner person if it came out earlier, because I'm not an English first language speaker, and doing undergrad in Afrikaans and postgrad in English was really hard for me. So I used AI to explain difficult concepts to me, but I do agree that we do need some form of a policy or something, because students are not sure whether or not they can use AI and when they can't. And it does cause a bit of distress. An example is, I was helping a a student with a project the other day, and then she came to me very nervously and said that she got this framework from AI. She basically had her own idea, refined it using AI, and now she thought she had to like start all over again because she used AI. So yes, it does cause stress, and I hope that we can find some solution soon.
Thanks, Amanda. It's nice of you to share your experiences, and also I think you're just underwriting the data that's been presented, that people feel this chronic uncertainty, and they need the comforts of knowing they haven't done something bad, or they have followed the instructions that they've been given. And I think that is something that, if not at a university level, if not at faculty level, then departments need to decide what it is that they'll accept for what level of student, because you might allow some senior levels of students to do more than junior levels, or the other way around, or however you're seeing it. But it can't be that we have one very tight guideline document for absolutely everyone, because of course all the objectives and all the ideas of what you want your student to have will be different. I'm going to switch to the chat, and thanks guys for participating there as well. Malcolm, a lot of these questions would be for you. So Ashay is one of our research assistants, and he's asking you all about stats, confidence levels, as well as p-values. I don't know if you want to climb in, Malcolm, and have a look at that question and give us some of the guidelines on the stats that you used. And Colafelo wants to know about online students. We don't have so many fully online students, but Kutwana wants to know about the sample sizes. So yeah, there's some things in the chat. Maybe Malcolm, you can answer for us.
No problem. So remember, the data is non-parametric. And because of its non-parametric nature, the confidence levels on non-distributed data were nearly impossible to achieve. Most of the formulas we utilized were non-parametric formulas for this very reason. On the principal component analysis, we only selected the variables we wanted to assess, and that was normally distributed. So we used Yamani 1976 to confirm our population size and determine our sampling methods to ensure that we covered and we had a full representative sample. So in terms of our sampling size and our confidence interval levels, we actually achieved a higher than 95%. We achieved 98% just because of how responsive we were with the surveys. So if I can remember correctly, and I might be off a student, but it was 398 students required for a 95% confidence interval level. And we achieved far beyond that because of the response rate. The data was so rich that we could even subsample. A good example of that was the non-parametric crucial H. Wallace test, where we could actually subsample 200 students who were non-NSFAS and 200 students who were NSFAS, and were able to run the test simultaneously on a particular sample on non-parametric data. So we did address the p-value love, and how we addressed it was by turning it on its head and not solely relying on parametric data like regression, Pearson's correlation, and traditional factor analysis. So I love the question, because that kind of question, it always gets asked. But we did effectively tackle that, especially because of how important this data is. It needs to be that rigorous because it's the first of its kind in Africa. And the project in its third year needs to expand out of South Africa into Africa through the collaboration of 100 African research-intensive universities. And this research instrument will then be used in all universities to then establish an African perspective, which Prof. Genga has taken on his shoulders, but I know he'll accomplish it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, that's very comprehensive. Ashay, I don't know if you have more than that, but I think you've answered certainly what he started off to ask. I think, Malusi, the one thing that's worrying me, you're saying here, the more the university avoids the AI conversation, the harder it gets to control the use of it. So two things. First of all, I don't think the university is avoiding the AI conversation. I think that's what these kinds of workshops and webinars are all about, is hearing what other people are doing and also engaging with the specific differences, the disciplinary differences that then allow us to be flexible in designing a policy. And also, so the second part of the thing that's worrying me about that is this issue of control. Higher education, academic education, we're talking about university teaching. We want people to be like leading the world, to have ideas that can just blow away the current situation and to develop us. So you want social justice projects, you want people who are really thinking out of the way that things work. So to say that using a tool should be controlled is, I think, limiting us to, as I say, I said before, we don't really want to be policing students. We want them to be using this generatively to assist in moving us to a different place. So I think that our policies, particularly in our faculty, where we don't usually ask for take-home exams, and we're not a very writing-intensive faculty, what we really want is to develop people's cognitive abilities in terms of decision-making and clinical reasoning. Those are things that we could strongly encourage people to use AI for, because they can bounce off this idea of individualized adaptive learning, one-on-one learning. Those are things that AI can help us with, which our current staff position can't help with, really. And so it would be very assistive, I think. So maybe our approach has to be very much non-punitive and non-regulative, but our staff needs training in how to set exercises that allow students to understand that they're using the AI correctly and getting the most out of it, and it's helping in their own personal growth. So, I mean, I think in terms of a statement of what our faculty should be aiming for, those are things that we could certainly focus on, rather than just worrying about usage or control. Okay. Oh, so, okay. Angelina has a question on process, Wendy, about whether you mixed students from different faculties or whether you just had groups of students from the same faculty.
Okay, so for the students, focus group discussions, in total, we had 22 students, but in each of the focus groups, there were students from different faculties. And even if they were in the same faculty, it would have been different field of studies. And these were the students that had indicated that they are interested in being part of the focus group discussion from the survey. And the survey was not only sent to online students, it was sent to the institution via RedCap. So that was the sample for the students. The limitation is in the staff focus group discussion, where there hasn't been a lot of responses, and we've had one focus group discussion and looking for more people to be part of that. So, yeah.
So we can certainly encourage all staff members, if you want to give your opinions on your current AI usage. I think brilliant that here's an opportunity to engage with the team and to give your opinions. Paul, I'm not sure of your question. I don't know if you want to open your mic and just ask specifically. This is WITS data. So it's cross-university, not our faculty specifically. Excuse me. But this Up Africa collaboration that Malcolm's talking about is something prospective. We still have to do that. So I don't know if you want to clarify your question. Okay, you're also not getting a working microphone.
Do you mind? Maybe I'll answer two questions in one. So this data is this is an institutional project. This project is funded by the UCDP to look at WITS data only, GIS GAI readiness at WITS. The instruments we are developing because of what the data is telling us. Remember, the first year of the project was just to determine GAI readiness. And from that data, build on that data what we can expect from the following years of the project. So this tool that we've developed, the idea is once we've tested it against our current theories, and we have 5 seminal theories that we are sort of that are coming across both in the quanti and the quali data, the model will then be rolled out in Africa to see if we can replicate and generalize the findings across Africa. Considering, for example, NSFAS is unique to South Africa. However, socioeconomic funding for higher education is diverse, and we would need to adapt the instruments to then meet the needs of the local university and then build a model from that. Hopefully that answers that question. In terms of accuracy, the confidence levels in this case was 98%. We far exceeded the minimum requirement sample population for WITS students, which there were approximately 42,000 students on the university, plus or minus, just from the top of my head. We far exceeded the sample required to collect in order to get a generalized finding across the university. And that was for both staff and students. More staff responded very well to the survey. We actually collected more than 25% of all staff participated in the survey. And we have just over 1,000 academics. So we have a very good generalized finding and good population sample. But I think that would be next webinar, Ms. Mark, where we present the staff survey data. For now, we're focusing on students, on the stakeholders.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I mean, yeah, I think all levels of this project are going to produce data that everybody is interested in. So thank you very, very much for coming and sharing it with us and sparking discussion points for us, because I think that it's hard to get a bird's eye view, an institutional view, when you're so focused on your department or your course or the people around you who are all saying the same thing. And that echo chamber effect, I think, is something we have to try and reach out around. So we very much appreciate you coming to not only give us your time, but your expertise and your interest and your enthusiasm. And we look forward to inviting the team back at various milestones in how the study is unfolding. And also, if people here are really interested in having questions with the team or connecting with the team or ideas for the team, you can contact me. Because I'm in regular contact with them, and we can look at our specific ideas and our faculty going forward. And as I said, I'm inviting all staff members to join the focus groups if you're interested in contributing towards their initial data. Malcolm, Wendy, any last comments as you go?
Yes, I think just the last comment from my side. The UCDP has also approved a mini core under this main institutional project, which will be coming out next week. So please keep an eye out in your inboxes for it, where there'll be mini funding grants issued to all faculties, open to all staff members who are interested in applying the research instruments at a very small scale. So at your school, on a particular subject, on a particular course, we want to know, we want to know at a micro level now, rather than a macro. And that would be happening in the second half of the year. You would be under the main UCDP GAI project at WITS, but just keep an eye out for that exciting opportunity.
Thanks so much for that reminder. That's brilliant. And Gavin, that's a conversation I think we can also have, because we can guide the faculty towards their interest and their enthusiasm. So that's brilliant. Wendy, do you want to add any last final thoughts about how it's going?
Yes. So like I mentioned, we are still very much interested in getting the insights from staff in terms of like how you feel about it, what's happening, and your experiences. I was trying to share the participation information sheets on the chat, but I'm unable. So I'll share it with you, Ms. Mark. Then you can share to anyone who's interested. And again, if you're interested, you can just send me an email. And once we have enough participants, I will arrange the discussion. It can be online, but if maybe there's a group of you that are on campus and still would like to have the focus group, I'm more than willing to come on campus and we have that. So again, thank you so much for listening to us. Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Malcolm, and thank you, everybody, for joining us on our weekly Wednesday webinar cruise, and we look forward to the series developing. There will be a format sent out with the advert in the next iteration to ask you to sign up if you want a calendar invitation marker. Put in your calendar for the weekly Wednesday webinar. We're not going to do it for the whole faculty. It'll drive everyone nuts. But if you would like that reminder, then we can drop that into your calendar. So keep an eye out for the next invitation. Thanks, everybody. It really went well. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday talking about the faculty AI guidelines development. Have a great Wednesday further. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.